The mixture control solenoid is an electrical device used on computerized carbureted vehicles that controls fuel flow from the main bowl of the carburetor to the main well, along with controlling an idle air bleed circuit. Symptoms of a failing mixture control solenoid would include a sudden drop in fuel economy or hesitation on acceleration. To test a mixture control solenoid, you will need a small, flat-bladed screwdriver, a hand vacuum pump, a jumper lead, and a digital voltometer. To prevent burns, always start with a cool engine. Label and disconnect any hoses attached to the air cleaner assembly and remove the air cleaner from the engine. The mixture control solenoid will be located inside the carburetor. During our demonstration, we will be working on a General Motors vehicle. The first test is to simply listen for the MC solenoid to cycle. Turn the ignition switch to the run position. On many models, you should begin to hear a clicking sound as the mixture control solenoid cycles. If a clicking noise is heard, the electrical part of the solenoid is okay. If no sound is heard, turn the ignition switch off. Ground the diagnostic terminals of the ALDL connector. For a complete demonstration of grounding the ALDL connector, refer to our onboard computer troubleshooting tape. Once again, turn the ignition switch to the run position. The solenoid should begin cycling. If no clicking is heard from the solenoid, replace it. Next, use a small flat-bladed screwdriver to release the lock tab and disconnect the electrical connector from the solenoid. Connect the leads of your ohm meter to the terminals of the MC solenoid. Polarity is not important. Set the ohm meter to the low ohm scale. You should see a reading between 20 and 50 ohms. If the reading is within specifications, the problem is most likely in the wiring harness or the computer itself. If the reading is not within specifications, replace the MC solenoid. If you have a General Motors vehicle with an externally removable MC solenoid, as shown, there is an additional test that can be performed. With the ignition key off, disconnect the electrical connection from the MC solenoid. Remove the solenoid from the carburetor and inspect the seals for damage. Replace any seals that are swollen or damaged. Reconnect the electrical connector to the solenoid. Connect a hand vacuum pump to the end of the solenoid with a piece of vacuum hose that will fit snugly over the rubber seal or stem. Using a test lead, ground the Kelly green connector. This is the terminal normally used to check MC solenoid dwell. Turn the ignition switch to the run position, but do not start the engine. This will energize the solenoid in the lean position. With the hand vacuum pump, apply 5 inches of vacuum to the solenoid. The vacuum should hold for at least 5 seconds. If it will not hold vacuum, as in our demonstration, replace the solenoid. If it will hold 5 inches of vacuum for 5 seconds, that part of the solenoid is okay. Then, disconnect the ground lead from the Kelly green connector. The vacuum gauge reading should go to 0 instantly. If it does not, replace the solenoid. To test it for restrictions, apply a rapid hand vacuum pump action several times. Wait a couple of seconds in between strokes. The gauge should move slightly, then return to 0 before the next rapid stroke. If the gauge does not return to 0 between these rapid strokes, the fuel feed orifice is restricted and the solenoid should be replaced.
The mixture control solenoid is the electrical equivalent to the power valve circuit on non-feedback carburetors. Let's recap the testing procedures just performed. First, ground the ALDL connector and turn the ignition key to the run position. Listen for the MC solenoid to begin cycling. If no sound is heard, test the winding resistance of the solenoid with an ohm meter. Set the meter to the low ohm scale, and with the electrical junction disconnected, the resistance between the two terminals of the solenoid should fall between 20 and 50 ohms. If not, replace it. If it is an externally accessible solenoid, you can remove it from the carburetor and visually inspect it for damaged seals. Then, with the wiring connector in place, connect the hose from a hand vacuum pump over the stem of the solenoid. Ground the Kelly green connector and turn the ignition switch to the run position. Apply 5 inches of vacuum to the solenoid and it should hold that vacuum for at least 5 seconds. Then disconnect the ground lead from the Kelly green connector and the vacuum gauge on the hand pump should go immediately to 0. If not, replace the solenoid.
To install an externally mounted solenoid, the tools you will need include a set of screwdrivers and the correct MC solenoid and gasket for your vehicle. To prevent burns, always start repairs on a cool engine. Because gasoline and gas vapor is very flammable, there are some important precautions to remember when working on the fuel system. Always work in a well-ventilated area. Do not smoke while doing fuel system repairs. Keep open flames, sparks, or bare bulbs away from the work area. Do not work in an area with a gas appliance equipped with a pilot light. And have a fire extinguisher of the proper rating close at hand. First, make sure all accessories, including the ignition key, are turned off. Label and remove any hose connections to the air filter housing, and remove the air filter housing from the engine. Now, locate the mixture control solenoid on top of the carburetor. Unplug the 2-wire harness from the solenoid. A small, flat blade screwdriver may be useful to release the locking tabs. Remove the screws attaching the solenoid to the carburetor, and remove the MC solenoid by pulling up with a slight twisting motion. Compare the old solenoid to the new one to ensure proper replacement. If the old gasket is still on the carburetor, remove it, making sure the mounting surface is clean. Then, position the new gasket on the carburetor. Put a small dab of clean engine oil on the rubber O-ring at the bottom of the new MC solenoid. This will allow it to slip into place easier and help prevent damage to the O-ring. Now, carefully install the MC solenoid by pressing down with a slight twisting motion to help the O-ring slip into place. Reinstall the mounting screws and reattach the wire harness. Reinstall the air cleaner assembly and reconnect any hoses or wires earlier removed. Test drive the vehicle for proper operation and you are done.
To replace an externally mounted mixture control solenoid on a GM vehicle, first turn off all the accessories including the ignition key. Remove the air cleaner. Unplug the 2-wire harness from the solenoid. Remove the mounting screws and remove the solenoid from the carburetor by gently pulling up with a slight twisting motion. Compare the new and old solenoids to be sure of correct replacement. Place a dab of clean engine oil on the O-rings of the new solenoid. Now carefully install the new solenoid in the carburetor using downward pressure and a slight twisting motion. Reinstall the mounting screws and tighten to the proper torque specifications. Reattach the wiring harness. Reinstall the air cleaner and reconnect any hoses disconnected earlier. Lastly, test drive the vehicle for correct diagnosis.
To install and adjust an internally mounted mixture control solenoid on a General Motors carburetor, you will need a magnetic screwdriver and assorted bits, a digital volt ohm meter, a carburetor gauge set, a mixture control adjusting tool, an idle mixture adjusting tool, an idle mixture seal plug removal tool, a small pin punch and a ball peen hammer, a 1/8 inch drill bit, a number 8 sheet metal screw, a pair of locking pliers, the appropriate carburetor gasket set, a small tube